Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to URU Complete Chronicles. So we did the main game and we did the first expansion, Path to Deny. Now, perhaps I could have gotten closer to the final little area of Deny if I had spent 20 minutes walking down a spiral mining cave. It's not worth it just to see a little bit of imagery, and that's pretty much all you seem to get. We reset the Grand Zero, not that it works in the real True Island. And I will say, compared to Path of Deny, the Path of the Shell, which is kind of supposed to be the symbol that wraps things up, we started with the handprint, and then the handprint is still kind of emphasized on the side of this book, but then we're shown this other symbol that doesn't really do anything, and right at the end of this expansion you're shown the Path of the Shell again, and the Path of the Shell is pretty much going to wrap it up. Feels like they probably should have had different symbols for each expansion and more journey cloths. There were no journey cloths whatsoever. There are actual puzzles in Path of the Shell, but Path of the Shell also kind of is even more complicated and more impossible to figure out than Journey to Deny, or To Deny. I keep wanting to call it Journey to Deny, but it's really just called To Deny. So, fairly quickly, we're going to run into the walkthrough and just pretty much follow it completely. Like, things like this, now that we do have the key, does allow us to take pictures. When we first played the game and started the game, we didn't have the key, so that would be a bit of a problem. Also, we have here a location marker now, but the location markers don't integrate in any way with the image, which it sure feels like that would have been more helpful if there was some kind of garbled location when you took a picture, and then once you reset the grade 0 it would tell you where you took the picture. What are you supposed to really take from this, though? Kind of hard to tell. Now, this isn't Deny, but this certainly feels like the place that Deny was. And I don't know if we even wandered around much around here. I'm not sure if we read all of this. I suppose this might be the beginning of the story, telling you what to do if you're going to read this. But again, pretty lazy. Like, I'm lazy as a game player, certainly, for not wanting to read this, but pretty lazy as a game development to show me what looks like a map to a maze that I have yet to find, and not tell me what the goal is at all. And then over here we seem to have a linking book to another area. What we won't have is any of the blinking of this, I'm sure. We have no more calibration points, when it feels like there really should be some calibration points. Game feels a little herky-jerky too. And we can look out here and we can see that there's like a great tree type building. But again, this doesn't feel like Deny. And certainly now you can just take pictures of all these time stamps. Let's give it the old college try. That was weird. Clicking both buttons has caused the window to minimize, and now trying to click back into the window has caused it to not work. So I'm gonna pause this recording and Control-Alt-Delete it, and we'll start again, because something is going on weird here. Be right back. Okay, I think we're back here. I hope I'm recording. To suffice it to say, pausing and unpausing videos, yeah, is new to me. So we'll just hope that this is recording, and I think I can say that we probably are, yeah. So, yeah, we've got so far one book in one area and another book in another area. Probably because I didn't want to run around too much. And I don't know what happened on the game there, specifically why it locked up, but it was definitely not responding. Seeing all of these times, though, seems a little premature. What they're not really throwing at you is just like a nice little introductory puzzle. Something simplistic, something easy, something to kind of start things off and establish just what's going to go on. Oh, and there's a way to climb up here, isn't there? So this ball is rolling downward. And we've got a clock spinning. I think this might all just be a trick. I think the solution might be something as simple as staying here for like a minute and 40 seconds is all that needs to happen for either a secret door to open like in this wall, or for this to shoot out and be a place where you can climb up taller. The problem, though, is the key system would have been really nice to give you a time mechanism, a clock. Something that would either show just standard minutes, hours, seconds, or something that would give us a deny clock system or a ribbon clock system where you have to actually do something more. And I think there probably is a trick here where you have to just stand on this platform for a while, and very possibly an incredibly long amount of time. Of course, you could have to stand in like that circle or that circle. You could have to stand here as the ball rolls down. You could have to do any number of things, and there's really no hint. So it's fairly obvious that they want you to not be able to figure out the solutions, and I feel like I might even slightly remember the solution, and that's why I'm even suggesting that the solution is standing here for a long time as this clock is ticking. Most people would not ever randomly do this. It seems for the online version of this, that would be like the equivalent of just going AFK, and nobody wants to encourage somebody to go AFK in the game. So yeah, the whole thing doesn't make sense. Otherwise, up here, you've got nothing. It'd be nice if you could jump over a few more things. Actually, I did manage to jump quite a distance. Also, be nice if you weren't just blocked off by cloths. It'd be nice if there was a little bit more of a barrier there. Let's see where this takes us. I really just want to give this a solid 30 minutes at most of wandering around, though, because most people, including me, were not thrilled with URU, the main game of URU, so no surprise that most people would not be particularly thrilled with the expansions of URU either. And the first expansion really is just feels like half cut content and half a intentional waste of the player's time. Like, there's in 2003, I'm sure you could look up on Wikipedia just all the games that came out in 2003, and I guarantee you could find at least a dozen games that would have been more worth your time. Very much including, I imagine, World of Warcraft. And for as much as I may sometimes not be amazingly thrilled with grindy RPG games, there is something very familiar and common with the idea of just playing something that gives you the basic idea of what you're supposed to do, which is to run around and grind on killing weak enemies until you get stronger, and then follow a generic storyline that eventually ends up with you saving the world. Seems like these gears are kind of orbital planetary gears. That one's a little to the right, and that one's kind of in the exact center, and that one's a little to the left. And here we have another time. And here we go. This looks like we're going directly into a waterfall. Also, the area we were in was yet another 0-0 area. And here we are in yet another area that's 0-0. But I am about to blow your mind. Like, I remember this puzzle. It's honestly like one of the best puzzles I've ever seen in the Myst series. It's a shame, really, that it is in URU, because it's easily missable because of that, because easily you could probably skip everything else about URU and not really miss it. It's kind of a shame that this doesn't get integrated into, didn't get integrated into like Myst 4 or something. I'm gonna blow your mind. That's right. Third person swimming. No joke. You actually swim in this place. You don't drown. Now, every other single place, as I'm about to fall over into this area, the currents don't let you go anywhere, but every other place in every other world in Myst, in the entire Myst series, you have not been allowed to swim. But also, if you think back to URU, there's been actually very little sections that even had water. Most of the places you could fall are places in the sky, like sky boxes. Now, there is a lot more to this island than just being pushed around in currents. And this controls pretty awfully. It's like a backstroke option. But also, I will fully admit this island does not really motivate you very well to jump in the water. Because that experience that we just had, not so good. We do now have that linking book, however. Like, if anything, it just feels like that was some small experiment that they were trying to implement. And it's a good experiment. It's an experiment that unfortunately doesn't go anywhere. I don't think you swim in water and have currents push you back at all in the entirety of Myst 4 or Myst 5. We spent quite a lot of time in this area, I believe. And it's a weird starting position they have you in, actually. So yeah, we remember this area, and we spent a decent amount of time there. And we were kind of halfway through the solutions of this area, although we don't know the general puzzle. And there was definitely a lot of places that we had seen that had times and things like that. And it becomes fairly difficult to figure out what you're supposed to do. Let's see, if we go back, all of these symbols are kind of just indicators of counting systems, I think, more than anything else. Let's see, yeah, if we go back and we try to compare, this one has 4 squares, where that one has 3 squares. So, yeah, they don't really connect. I don't know how to play this next section, because we need to go back to the island that we were just on with the swimming. But I kind of remember that solution. So it's not really going to be a legitimate playthrough on my part. I will just have to apologize for that. Sure, it is totally feasible that I had some vague, fuzzy memories of the solutions to the rest of the game. But when we're talking that specific island, I love that section. Even at that, though, it is bigger and more complicated than you would think. Speaking of bigger and more complicated, this is a giant area we're in right now, none of which is in the same universe as the Great Zero, which I guess they didn't want to confuse the issue and make it feel like you were getting information that was going to be useful. But it also kind of points out that the integration of that DLC and that expansion doesn't help anything. It would have been kind of interesting if this started saying letters instead of numbers, or symbols instead of something. If there was actually some small hint that wasn't necessary but slightly helpful because of having the other expansion. I also wouldn't really be upset if the game literally just said you have to have installed the previous expansion and possibly even played the previous expansion before you could play this expansion. That's another factor that really kills the idea of trying to have a Myst game that is getting expansions and is an online service that was supposed to just grow naturally. But the real truth here is they never, Cyan, the creators of the Myst series, never had the momentum. Not for a second did they have the momentum that they would have needed to be making a game that would constantly get updates and be an online service. Myst 1, Riven, things like that, all of those were fairly slow developments. Yeah, and there's really no reason to even go any further in this direction, because once we start following the walkthrough, it will tell me a lot different as far as what I'm actually supposed to do in that area, which I think I solved some of it, but I definitely didn't solve all of it. So then that would bring us to this book that we have these checkpoint touch cloths, but you're not supposed to click. I don't think you're supposed to click them all. I don't think they light up. I don't think you're trying to get 7 of them. And then we have this little chamber area, and then we have this, and then there's really only one place. There's only one book on top of this. Alright. All of their ambition was really put in this island, to the point you have an actual crab-like creature, actual life you'll actually interact with somewhat all around this island. But you're gonna have to bear with me in this case because I kind of know the answer. Alrighty, there is this device here, I believe, and I believe that device is a indicator of the state of this island, which I don't know if island is perhaps the best description. By the way, when you walk near these guys, they will kind of run away from you. That is actually an important thing to recognize, and they made these paths small enough so that you would recognize that. Over there is something you actually have to interact with, which I guess is supposed to be a hint that you at one point will be able to swim. But you've got to get rid of the current, which I imagine it's not immediately obvious that you would be able to turn off the current in an ocean. These are like three-eyed crabs, three-legged crabs. Interesting that the three, I don't think it particularly plays a role, but yeah. So you're going to do some fairly miraculous things. That one just jumped in the water, and spoiler alert, that's what you've got to get all of the crabs to do. And obviously you would have run into at least one of them. No, I don't want to jump off the edge. That one started moving a little bit too much. Man, my mouse does not feel like it wants to control very well with the WASD, whereas in every other part of the game it has. So you have a fairly empty, I don't know if you call this an archipelago or what. And it almost feels like the Path of the Shell put these creatures on the island specifically to add life to this island, which actually makes this island not work. Because this island has to, at a point, have no life at least on the ground. I guess you kind of are assuming that these guys are jumping just into the water, not jumping to their death. Like, yeah, there's no screams of death there. And it would be kind of cruel to think that you're killing them. So we don't have like a zoom in, and that's part of the problem with this. Because the general idea, as I understand it, is that, if I remember correctly, these will all light up once we get all the crabs off the island. Then, how you would figure this out, I don't know. You use this linking book that's on the wheel, and you go back to where you started. This may actually have nothing to do with the crabs at all. And then you run this direction, and these are hints about the nature of the island that you were just on, but you won't get it until the very end, until the big reveal, which is kind of just the main puzzle. I imagine it's probably 50% of this puzzle. So we still have currents. We have some trees that may not have been there before. And we still have the clock. Now, I'm fairly certain you have to harangue all these guys off into the water. And that kind of means you have to approach them in a direction that will make them jump. Come on. At the very least, the game makes it feel like there's no big consequences for making them jump off the edges. Why is this a requirement? Kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make sense that you would write an age and make it work the way that this age seems to work, and then have it not work because there was animals on it. There's effectively a magic trick that's being done, whereas every other Myst age and different time and different versions of Myst ages have literally been transporting you to those different places. I'm trying not to spoil things here, but I'm really going to. So, again, apologies. There's a magic trick here that makes the same age look like it's a different time when it really isn't. Which, in a weird way, kind of opens the door to the thinking that maybe all the ages are just magic tricks. And maybe that is some weird way. They don't even splash. Man, talk about an unpolished game. Unfinished ideas. Yeah. It would kind of ruin the Myst series if it turned out that all the different ages that were different time periods of the same world that you kind of do see, or at least there's big implications that the ages are different time periods. Either that or an age is just a weird collection of different worlds. You could also take it to mean that, but that would not really make sense just based on what the word age means. Like, the concept that two ages might share the same name, and that just means that at a certain age of like enlightenment, some Myst linking book creators found two linking books or wrote two linking books to two different universes. But yeah, that really doesn't make sense. You could easily spend several hours wandering around, and this is wandering around these new areas. On top of that, it's not wandering around the previous areas before you figure out that it is the goal of, let's see, it is the goal of this island to see. He's just working his way up. Well, if you're gonna work your way up, I'll work you back downward. Yep. There's definitely room for more integration here. A just better experience. This could have been part of the Real 2 island. They could have easily, by installing the third expansion, put the Real 2 island in the middle of this ocean, and then had just everything else you see be around this section. That certainly would have made the Real 2 island a lot more interesting. It would have even put some of the genius that is the design of this island into a higher level of just perfection. Because if you told me Atrus's daughter was the one that created this puzzle world, that would be amazing. And it would give more characterization to her. And you could have certainly blocked off accessing any of this island by just using the currents and having the Real 2 island be in the middle and this island itself just being a lot bigger. It's not like this game has had any problem having you run around giant areas in the past. If anything, this is a kind of great counter argument to the Nevada desert area, to have a big island area that just is not empty of life and empty of a real puzzle. And even if this was the Real 2 island area, the odds that you would knock all of these guys off into the water are kind of low. Like, it's taking some real work. They're not bad AI by any means. They do pretty much run in the opposite direction of whatever direction you're facing. Now, what's interesting about that checkpoint is once we figure out how this island works, there's something questionable about what would happen if you teleported into the checkpoint area, because theoretically that journey cloth of the shell, the checkpoint, would move, and the story so far has said that they don't move, that they stay in the same place. Yep. In a weird way, it took one full game and one full expansion for them to finally hit an island that actually feels a little Myst-like. Although you still have big problems with this island. It is much closer to one of the puzzle islands that Myst connects to than Myst Island itself, in the sense that there kinda is only one puzzle here. It's a big, long puzzle, but it's just one puzzle in general. Also, you kind of have like Mystery Exile, in that you see all these rock-like structures over in the edge, things that look very man-made. That it would be very weird for nature to have cut cut out squares. Although, when you're talking Myst Islands, that's a hard argument to make because every world is potentially alive. So now you can see there's 3 blue dots remaining, and that's what we're doing is we're effectively eliminating all the life on the island, almost as if it's a scale that is weighing the island, and these little crabs are too heavy. They should be in the ocean instead. Although if the entire weight of the island could be moved, what difference does a few crabs make? You may have to run around a little bit more because I may have missed one. These characters are not quite big enough because when you look around here, it'd be pretty tough to see a moving little crab creature. It'd be pretty tough. And we won't get any audio feedback if we're not getting a sound effect that sounds like something we should be doing originally. We're definitely not going to get a sound effect, I would doubt, when we get all of the little crabs off the island. Come on. You look like you're the last guy. And see, if you were playing this online, so either there's one left or I'm left, and I'm the last life form on the island, and it probably is worth it to kind of run around and see if we missed one. Let's see. No, it's pointing towards me. I'm the last life form on the island. So this thing does not activate. Now, why in the world does this not rotate or have a screen on the other side? That really just feels like bad design. And here, let's go ahead and turn off the key, since it's not going to play a big role. So, yeah. There's not even really a great symbol to indicate that you should be trying to get the blue dot to point where you're standing. So, yeah. With the exception of the fact that you can swim around in that area and get stuck in the water with the currents, and that you can play with the little crabs, it would be very, very easy to wander in that area and think that there's basically nothing there to find, or at least nothing there to find at the moment, and just leave and try and wander around the other areas. And it becomes an exponentially greater problem when that happens, because then there's literally nothing stopping you from going to previous worlds and thinking that there might be new content in the previous worlds. So take a look. We are in a different time, a different time frame for the same world, a different age. The trees are now crystallized. Everything is all foggy, and one would imagine you don't want to jump down there. We no longer see large built-up islands, we see broken down things. Let's see. We see a lot of crystals. I'm not sure if I actually need to break all the crystals, or if it's simply just my personal decision to do it. Like, I've already run into one, so if there was a reason I needed them to not be broken, I've blown that. Seems like there might be some caves down there. This is a slight improvement, I would say, compared to running around and finding checkpoints, though. Yeah, even if it was dry ground down there, it'd just be so foggy it would be impossible to see. So we may decide to drop down there. And I believe the cloth was there, and the cloth is definitely not there now. Yeah, that just straight up tried to jump me into first person mode. I'm not ready to do that. Well, go ahead and still come over here and break everything. What would actually crystallize such life forms and trees? I have no idea. And like, it would have to be some weird chemical or biological character item to turn trees into crystals. We still have little bits of grass, so not all life got crystallized. Just all the trees. And one kind of assumes that this is right. I'm gonna go ahead and leave that one alone. That way there will still be one bit of life. Yeah, we can see now slightly better that it does want us to break all the life forms, all the crystals. Interesting. But it is also kind of the same gag, where it feels like there should have been a different gag. Maybe a slightly easier way to get up on these rocks. And I suppose it's worth testing this out before we go and do this. So, as far as I can tell, there is one thing left. So when we go here, it's either going to take us back to the original version, or it's going to put us exactly back where we were. And when you see all these gears and all this mechanical things, it really feels like a mechanical age would be the right move. So it would be nice if the storyline said that this actually is just a different island of the mechanical age from Myst 1, and that the mechanical ages we had seen in even previous games were just different islands in the same universe. I think that would be a real cool idea. I don't see any life. it seems to me what it's pointing to. So maybe it is expanding the concept a little bit. Seems to me what it's pointing to is that building. So we'll have to see if we can do that. This also kind of falls apart completely as a idea. I don't think I could get on top of those rocks. It kind of falls apart completely as an idea in the URU game, particularly because you are sort of capable of leaving at any point. Alright, here we go. Terrible tank controls. Are we gonna have some coughing? And yeah, I can just like barely make out some darkness. So that was awful. And it's kind of a great example of I got stuck. Yeah. Kind of a terrible example of how this game is not a fully playable game in first person perspective, even though it really should be. So if I quick teleport here, where does it take me? It takes me to this time, which is interesting, but the cloth is not there. That is interesting. I'm gonna go ahead and start in first person perspective mode and almost fall off. I'm gonna try to be a little bit further to the right. And get this over here as a checkpoint. And back here we have that tree that needed to be disintegrated. And over here we have a dark hole, which even in first person is still just a dark hole. And now we walk back. So I guess the implication is that everything else below this point is very, very deep. A very deep, giant ocean. And I would just fall to my death in the smoke. Interesting. I'm fairly certain I smashed this one. Interesting. Well, I either missed one or one of the crystals grew back. I don't know why one of the crystals would grow back, as that clearly is what they want us to do, is destroy all the crystal trees. I think we're good. So off we go, back, going in circles. But at the very least, when we're going in circles here, that is this. Actually, this whole door in symbol is actually a hint to what's going on. Yeah, playing this a second time, there's really just a ton of stuff that's being shown to you directly, and they just kind of know that you won't figure it out. Yeah, half of these symbols are spoilers for what's going on, and I doubt anybody figured it out at all. I kind of like the idea here of going in circles, because it makes sense. It's to the purpose of actually solving something, compared to the main game, and particularly the previous 2 Denied DLC, where there really was no purpose in the game making you wander around, find coordinates. There's really no purpose for the game having you wander. Yeah, I don't think I want to go down there because I think I would die. So, if the first area was a full of life ocean island, and the second area was a storm has come, and that has caused life to the trees to crystallize, and this is the space slash whole of the universe. The space that we've seen in several other places seems to have begun to eat this age. Apparently that's what happens to ages, is that the books start to deteriorate that create the ages, and I guess you kind of have to make the assumptions that the books create the ages in this case. I very well may have to fast travel to get to that platform using the checkpoint I clicked. So yeah, it seems like the ages just kind of die. Unless somebody is constantly writing things into it, strengthening it using their magic, or they create a very balanced system. I think that was what Myst 3 was trying to say, is that the worlds that are balanced can potentially live forever. If there was a book specifically that created the Nevada Desert, one would have to assume that whoever the creator was that wrote Earth as an age wrote it particularly well. But you didn't also run into a problem with this that they do solve, in the fact that they've created a secondary system here that seems to effectively just be time travel, where you're traveling very, very far into different ages, much further than we've seen in any of the other games, any of the other ages. Unless this age in particular just dies, or did happen to die way quicker than all the other ages. I don't think this works, the machine. So either there is no life on this world and we'll be able just to cycle through it perfectly fine, on to whatever's next, and who knows what this big ring is supposed to represent. It seems oddly out of place, and very possibly a visual glitch in general. So let's see what that does for us. And how much time do we have here? about 3 minutes. I want to at least begin to reveal the secret of this island before we wrap up this episode. I really, really liked this reveal and this element. This is probably, if this was missing, I probably would have only done a short spotlight of URU, or at least played through the walkthrough a lot quicker. Because, yeah, there's not a big reason to play the game without seeing this part. Although I guess in all fairness, I did also forget that this was in URU. I thought this might have been in Myst 4 or Myst 5. And that might be a foreshadowing admittance on my part that the entirety of Myst 4 and Myst 5 are not particularly as good as you might think they might want it to be. So notice how these sections are pretty much blocked off by the current. So my attempts there to swim was fairly quickly thwarted, and all the water in the area does pretty much just spin you back towards the central area, making it kind of impossible to get anywhere else. It kind of stinks. It would be nicer if there was a way to get back up. That's a small little change that would have been easy for them to do. But that's definitely not really the case. You can't get up on... Oh, maybe you can get up on that. Alright. So you can swim up. Interesting. So, Reel 2. Reel 2 Island. When we exit, and when we go... Let's see. Is this the book? Nope, that's not the one. This is the book. It even has the same symbol on the spine of the book. Real spoilers. So, now that we set that set point, we can get over here. Which does what for us? Lets us take a screenshot and then immediately turn the key off. There's nothing in there we can reach our hand with inside. So yeah, nothing more to that. So can I swim along this part? No, it's just not worth it. So it's probably easier to jump back to Reel 2, jump back to this area, and then walk through this gate. And see, the transition, I think, happens when you walk towards this gate and walk down this hallway. That's what I think triggers you to be on a different island. So I should be now in the misty island area, but I'm not. Okay. So fair enough, the transition doesn't just get triggered when you walk through the hallway. You have to do a full counterclockwise jog around the island. I think most people would have probably figured out that was the thing that was changing the time place of this, the time frame of this island, if people figured that much out. If you never figured out that this was your one little hint to kill all of the little lobsters, which you never get to see again in the game, which it seems silly. It seems like there should have been some way to see them, or have them show up on the real 2 island or something. But yeah, if you never got to this point, you would imagine it was just a whole lot of nothing. And I couldn't really blame a player for thinking that it was a whole lot of nothing. I couldn't really blame a player for thinking that this whole section here was the end point of it, and there was just a present and a future, instead of there being a present, a future, and then a far future option. And I think it's only a slight spoiler to say there's probably one more time frame that we have yet to go through. Well, I guess that is probably a bigger spoiler than it should have been. Alright. So what I want to do here, and this really is the only point in which the real 2 island and URU itself integrates into this, is we're going to teleport to the space, far distant future. Then we go back to real 2 island. Now, unless something's wrong, using the checkpoint should take us to that platform in the future. And I believe what that just accomplished is now we have a checkpoint inside the building instead of outside of the building. So we'll just jump and go back to real 2. And yeah, we're gonna start to run out of time here, but we'll do this. One more run around. This area is a little more dangerous than it feels like it really should be. It does kind of emphasize some of the things that the Deny Recovery Council, which by the way we're really not doing a lot as far as all of that. Like, we're not seeing any barriers. These seem like areas that the Deny Recovery Council themselves have not ever visited at all. But their argument to only go to approved locations, otherwise you might fall to your death, falls on more reasonable ears when you look at this area. And remember, one assumes that none of the other people have the real 2 books, or at least only one person we found had a real 2 book. So it does seem like most people that are wandering around Deny with the Deny Recovery Council do seem to be risking their lives every time they fall. And let's face it, there have been a lot of places we have fallen to our death. And yeah, you definitely would have to have some major familiarity with the concept of linking back and forth. It would be pretty insane to try to do this puzzle if you had not played any of the previous Myst games or just been using linking books left and right for several hours up to the point where you're very comfortable with it. So now we're in the present day and we're going to teleport to inside the building. At least that's the hope. And it's pitch black. Okay. So now we have a mechanical door. And that opens up over here. And we can see we are in the regular age. And over here we have a device. They closed the door and seemingly rotated something. We also have ladders on every side, which again feels like something that you would only need if you're trying to make the game be acceptable and approachable. Okay. So I think we may have rotated the entire building. This feels like this is an observation building, if I was to guess. And I don't know why the game would want you to have to spin the building a bunch and then climb up. Seems like it would just be easier. Now we've moved a valve. And so we can see a tree. Yeah, why not just make this hole, which was that black hole, by the way? Why not just make that a little bit bigger? Like, yeah. Well, it didn't spin the building. We're still facing the same area. But we definitely did something. And we could climb up on these other ladders. And clearly we're going to have to probably click on this some more. And click on this some more. We may even have to use the walkthrough a little bit. I did say I know most of the solution here. But this middle point, and we kind of are just at the middle point, maybe the part I don't remember. And I don't think you can climb up that ladder. So you can't even close the door. Interesting. Well, I think compared to the 2 Deny DLC, or compared to the main game, this I have a lot more nostalgia for. I will say there is very much one big puzzle in the path to the shell. Maybe we are doing a small, like, first act of that one big puzzle, but it is, I'm fairly certain, integrating solutions to later puzzles, and it's not quite like the main game of URU was, where you pretty much could go to one world and get at least 5 or 6 of the 7 journey cloths clicked without even ever having to leave that world. I feel like that was probably the way all of these worlds should have worked. There should have been no integration per book at all, and each thing should have just been its own little standalone episodic experience, kind of like a Telltale game. It would be very interesting to see what a episodic experience in the Myst world would be. Not in the sense that I'd want it to be a Telltale game where there's no action and it's just conversation, although it might be very interesting to have characters that have more conversation in the Myst universe, but simply writing a short, bespoke, discrete segment. 1 book equal 1 world equal 7 journey cloths, and that's it. At no point will you get a linking book that takes you to a different world or a different age. At no point will you get a key system that integrates across several different worlds, but not all the different worlds. At no point will you activate a great zero marker that how it works in the first expansion but does absolutely nothing for you in the second expansion. And you at no point would you get a third expansion that really is just its own standalone experience. There definitely is something to be said about the quality kind of lacking in Myst 4 and Myst 5. I think the development hell situation made it where it was kind of impossible to put what had been developed over the 10 years for URU into Myst 4, because I suspect Myst 4 is using completely different models and completely different technology, and I imagine Myst 5 is using a completely different technology too, because you do something rather weird in Myst 5 instead of solving puzzles for most of it. Well, anyways, this is where we're going to end this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.